What's up my people, my name is Spicey and today we're reading Douchebag Makes My Life Hard, so I'd ousted him for insurance fraud. Don't mess with my money and how I got my revenge on a boss that did not pay me. And finally, teacher betrays me, friend gets reverse card and betrays her back. But before we get into the story of this guy who everybody hates but somehow never gets fired, congratulations the one for the comment of the day, and everyone leave a fire emoji in the comments if you think the video is fire. Douchebag makes my life hard, so I'd ousted him for insurance fraud. A little over a year ago, I started working as an electrician with my dream company. I got good hours, $25 per hour, great coverage, and a lot of experience. My employer was a decent family business kind of guy who always commended me on my work and understood whenever I needed to take time off, which I tried to limit to as little as possible. Yup, I was living the good working life until we hired Carl. Carl was a man's man. A big, beefy, jock kind of dude who strives to be as manly as possible. Any guy who deviated from the path of manliness was relentlessly ridiculed and humiliated by Carl. You use gloves? Ridicule. You hate spiders? Ridiculed. You piss sitting down because you're too lazy to stand and use a urinal? Ridicule. The guy was an absolutely sickening sight to most guys on site, and I was one of, if not the most picked on guy. It seemed that everything I did was an invitation for the guy to take a verbal dump on me. I brought it up to my employer, but Carl played the innocent card and somehow had people to help back him up on it. So the ridicule continued for a while until I had enough. The man was a thorn in my side for too long, so I wanted revenge. I did not know how I would do it, but I was determined to get him back. Thankfully for me, Carl was a booster, and he boosted about a lot of stuff he really should not have. One such thing was the time he got away with insurance fraud. As he tells it, his parents used to spoil him rotten. In his early 20s, they bought him a car and insured it for everything: fire, theft, vandalism, the whole 9 yards. But the ungrateful brute was not happy with the car they got him. They would have none of his complaining, and he would have to deal with it until he ran the car into the ground. That was until his friend suggested the crazy idea of falsifying an insurance claim. He reported his car stolen, and it was found by the police 3 days later, burned out in a backlot. His insurance net him a decent sum of money, which he then used to buy a better car and fully insure it. He even boasted about how the insurance company, in full name, never caught him and how stupid they were. This was how I get back at him. I let a coworker who was also sick of Carl in on the plan. I will record him admitting to committing insurance fraud and send a copy of the recording to the police and insurance firm. I bought a little recording device and hid it in my pocket during work. When Carl was in earshot, I started up a conversation with my coworker about how I'd used to get away with stealing candy bars from a corner store I lived by when I was a kid. And as soon as Carl heard me, he retorted with a "Huh, that's nothing," which I took as my cue to start recording. This fool blattered out everything and did a good job giving details. At the end of it all, just to seal the deal, I said, "Really? You, Carl, a criminal extraordinaire, got away with insurance fraud?" With his arm folded up in triumph and a smug look upon his face, he replied, "You're damn right. I am smarter than I look, huh?" That night, I took my proof home and converted it into an audio file on my computer and used a burner email account to send it to the local police station and his insurance company. 3 days later, Carl did not come to work. He did not come in the next few days either. I eventually learned that he got arrested at home and is currently on unpaid leave from work. He's not fired, but he's not receiving money either, so it's just as bad as being fired. Not a super big revenge story with a climatic ending, but I am definitely satisfied with the outcome. Don't mess with my money. How I got my revenge on a boss that did not pay me. I was working for a local computer build company back in the 90s. The owner, let's call him George, was a bit of a douche that liked to party. He struggled to get his business off the ground and took the lion's share of the profit made once it did. All of that is to be expected. You take the risk, you take the rewards. I came on and ended up being the best technician he ever had in the shop. He paid me fairly well, but not enough for what I was doing. I finally started doing on-site work for a substantial amount more, and we were both happy. I got 30% of the on-site fee per hour and he got 70%. Now, during this time, the computer industry was tightening up and profit margins had shrunk. The owner decided to do some shady things. There was this one time George replaced name brand motherboards in the computers I sold to a customer for a network with a generic crap. Half of them failed during install. Since I had listed a name brand motherboard on the invoice, I took them all back and forced him to replace them. Otherwise, it would have been fraud. All he had to say was, "But I make another $40 per workstation if I use the cheaper part." The next thing that happened was I made a 10 computer plus server sale for a new network. I had not worked in the build shop for a few months and noticed that they were cloning drives to speed up the build process. Not a big deal normally, but I lost a client due to the owner's shady practices. He cloned the drives, then failed to put the certificate in the customer package for the OS and Office. He could not get around the server license, so at least the client had that. Every time the client called about the key codes, he'd tell them they were on back order. He was cloning preloaded and pre-activated drives with Windows and Office. I finally got tired of it and walked over to where the software was kept and took the licenses to the client. I had noticed the cabinet was unlocked, so took matters into my own hand. The client was still so pissed off that he refused to do business with me while I still work for that company. George saw me and accused me of stealing. I looked at him and said, "I am getting what the client paid for and taking it to them. I will make sure I have them sign a receipt for the software you seem to have forgotten to include in their purchase." After that, I started to pay attention to what was going on in the shop. I insisted on software before I even left the building with a client's system. The piracy got worse and worse. Now, during this time, I was making about 50K a year from that 30%. So George was clearing at least that much off his 70% even after taxes, etc. One day, he comes to me and says, "I think I have to start charging you for your cell phone. This was back in the day when you really needed a cell phone. Most companies paid for it." I said, "That's fine, George, but I will want 35% of the on-site fees." To which he replied, "I was going to lower it to 25% and make you an independent contractor." I was honestly left speechless. I just walked over to the bar in the shopping center and sat down and drank beer for the better part of 2 hours. It was the end of the day and I didn't have a late client, so no worries there. I sat for another 2 hours after that just drinking water and thinking. I made the decision to go my own way. If I was going to have to pay both sides of my social security, then screw George. I will do it out myself. The next day, I drove around to several of my clients. I did not want to call them on my soon-to-be former company phone. I secured a dozen that said they will stay with me. After all, as one of my clients told me, George was not the one that showed up at 5 a.m. before the restaurant opened when their point-of-sale system crashed. I was. When George's shop opened, I walked in with my phone, charger, etc. and I found George. I placed it all in his hands and said, "I quit," and I walked out. I went and got a phone and called the clients I had spoken with and gave them my new number. Payday came around the next day and I was expecting a bit over $2,000 in the check. George had called payroll in several days earlier as always. Well, lo and behold, no check. When I confronted him, he cussed at me out and told me he owed me nothing. I used the same type of line that I used with the guy at the ski manufacturer. I calmly told him, "Are you sure? I would cost you a hell of a lot more than $2,000 if you refuse to pay me what I earned." He just told me to get out, and I did. Well, I knew I had just cost him at least $5,000 a month because nobody in the shop had a clue what to do with networks. I started my own company and grew my client base. Even after having to pay all of my taxes, self-employment tax and expenses, I was clearing about $45,000 a year. I was going to leave George alone until I got word he was bad-mouthing me around the city. He was saying I used pirated software and cheap parts, things I knew he had done and was still doing. I would have just let it go, but when I heard he bad-mouthed me, I went scorched earth on his butt. Revenge. I contacted BSA. I gave names, dates, processes, practices, and more. Everything I could remember about clients that had cloned drives and withheld software. About a year later, I was reading my local news when George's company was in an article. It seems secret shoppers went in from Microsoft and bought some of his computers. In the end, they'd hit him with charges that he made hundreds of illegal copies of Office by cloning hard drives. This was back when once activated, Office stayed activated and did not check again. The end result was he had 3 stores and ended up with only 1 store alone with having to pay $1 million fine. Teacher betrays me, friend gets Uno reverse card and betrays her back. Just to tell you, this is not a Uno story. I have been lurking onto this sub for a long time and it's always impressed me with the revenges you all did. And I think it is time to share something too, which happened recently, so it is still very detailed. I am sorry if this looks fake to y'all. I have a habit to include very unnecessary information, making the situation sound like a made-up story. And pardon my English, I am not a native speaker. Let's start this story with a woman we will call Miss Howard, who was an all-around English teacher, from preschool to elementary until college. So she was very widely known and is hard to kick out of the school board. On my first years of high school, we were close to each other and I looked up on her because she is a very legendary person. She teaches English literature absolutely well, and since I admire her so much, I still put a lot of effort in my homework, even though I can normally pull a B+ without any efforts. Until this February. You see, I have a history of abuse from my narcissistic nanny, and since I have trusted Miss Howard so much, I have told her about it. She should be lucky because I only open up to those who I really trust, which are only a few people. One day, I was having difficulty understanding a certain story because on how incomprehensible the whole thing was. So I asked her a few questions, and she just ignored all of them until I asked this one question. Miss, why is she abused like that? She is not. And before I could even finish my question, she inhales and screams out this exact sentence, which will be forever in my brain. You were abused. How in the world do you not know the reason? Do you need more abuse to find out? Or you're just clearly dumb? She stops for a second. Well, I now know the reason why she did that. You clearly deserved it. I was feeling a lot of emotions after that. Betrayal, anger, sadness, but also disbelief and a slight tinge of laughter. How can she be so dumb? After a few days, her treatment towards me swiftly changed. I got a D on my submitted works and she did not listen to me anymore. It really affected my self-esteem and academic skills, and my friend noticed that. Lunchtime comes and she asked me to come in a very dark spot of the school and tells me this. You know what? I'm being honest with you, you should not have laughed about it before. And before that situation, I always have laughed at my friend's advice to not trust Miss Howard. But now, I just felt stupid about that. After that, she just comforted me and told me to be online in Facebook. She called me after and told me her side of the story. That Miss Howard trusted her with all her life. And upon knowing that, she admitted her desire to throw her favoritism-obsessed person out of the campus. And said today is the time, so she told me a plan. I was beyond shook the whole entire time because I thought this girl was a very angelic nerdy girl who happens to like Korean stuff. And this was the first time I had seen her curse and be downright brutally honest. We met in a Saturday, brainstorm ideas, and she told me that Miss Howard is her mentor for a national competition, adding more possibilities and even more brainstorming to the plan. We bought a pocket Wi-Fi modem so we can exchange texts while inside the school. She does not have a SIM card, so I can't call her without an internet connection. Monday flew in and secretly turned on her phone voice recorder in Miss Howard's class. We were trying to record her unfair treatment, and she obviously did not disappoint us. She screamed when I answered a question and turned into a different person when my friend answered. This continued for a whole month. We then turned in our recordings to the management, and after a few scoldings for bringing phones in school, they told us that it is okay and they will look into it. I thought, that's it, it's enough. But my friend decided to brutalize the F out of her. After winning her competition, she was chosen to lead the Teacher's Honor event thing, a part of her closing ceremony. She actually told the administration to be silent about it until the closing ceremony, so that they can have more time to prepare the things needed to yeet her out, yada yada. I actually can't contact her at this time. She always says that she's busy preparing videos for each other in high school. I only knew what she's been doing via her parents, which were actually very nice, yet passive-aggressive. Closing ceremony came in and everyone was there, including the school president. Typical normal event. And then it's time for my friend to make an entrance. Announcing every teacher and an MVP of them shows up and stuff. She saved the best for the last with Miss Howard, which surprisingly was met with silence instead of clapping and cheering. With a very fake looking smile in her face, she says those typical words you will ever say as a goodbye to your teacher. But instead of just ending it as a thank you, her face changes into the most evil smirk in her face and ends it up with these exact words. So thank you so much, Miss Howard, for being here with us, guiding us in our journey and helping us. Know that you've been a good teacher with bad moral values, and shall your favoritism obsessed butt be away from her campus. Immediately after that, she plays a compilation of her recordings, edited in a similar way as a crack video. But what actually shocked me the most are videos of her molesting other students, verbally abusing them, and slapping a kindergarten child in the face because she didn't know what pronouns are. And all of this is included in the compilation. Everyone standing one by one. Some are victims, some are shocked, and Miss Howard is beyond crying. No one cared to comfort her. And I was shocked to see my friend leading this mob of angry students and authorities glare, scream and shout at Miss Howard. She betrayed her so much and the whole venue was mad. She was forced to resign that day, and I did actually scold my friend for taking it a bit too far. But in the end, I finally have the perfect time to say that I now know the reason and I understand why she did that. She clearly deserves it. Aya, if you're here reading this, thank you for being a demonic saint. Hey, did you like this pro-revenge video? If you did, check out my playlist right here. I bet you will love it. These videos take me a lot of effort to make, so if you can show me some support by liking the video and subscribing, this will mean the world to me. Also hit the bell button to know when we post a new video and join the notification gang. Thank you again for watching the second episode of Pro Revenge. See ya!